Oh gosh, it is a beautiful day. Why is my hello, microphone? There we go. Always have to double check. Apparently about the mic not being on. Hey, what's up, Brett and friends? Jeff, how's everybody doing? Hope you're doing well. I'm great. I am out here getting my tropicals ready to move inside, doing some fall planters, and came across this caladium, and it reminded me that it's time for our yearly talk about moving your caladiums in. Here's the deal. This is something I've talked about a lot on this channel, but I get asked about it a lot every single fall, despite there being plenty of videos on it. So I'm just going to keep this one more on the short side and minimize the rant that I feel bubbling up from inside my gut. Last year, Proven Winners put a post up on Instagram. I don't know if it's still there, but there was a post saying to not bother overwintering your caladiums, that they just come back weak and they'll never look good. And there were people who had conversations with them about that, and they stuck to their guns on that one. And then I did a video talking about how ridiculous that was. They don't know. They're not the ones growing them. They have somebody who grows them for them, and that's what they were told by the people who grow them for them. It's just not true. Your caladiums, see, if they look like this, they're getting ready. They're ready to go to sleep. They're ready to chill out for the winter time. This one right here, this is a heart-to-heart explosion of gorgeous caladium. I highly recommend it. You can't tell right now. When it was in its prime during the summer, it just looked amazing. Have a lot of caladiums out here. What I like to do with them in the winter might vary from what you do, but that just goes to show that there are options. There's a whole bunch of them for what other people might be doing with theirs, I should say. If you're watching this, maybe you don't know what you're going to do with them. Over here, I have a whole bunch of the summer pink caladiums. Really big, beautiful, giant leaves on these guys. And they are starting to become more sparse. The day lengths have shortened, and things haven't really cooled off here, which is unusual, but they will be soon. We have entered into a drier season, so the caladiums are going to do that. When you start to see them start to die back like this and just get scraggly looking, you can do a few different things. What I like to do with them is to go ahead and just cut them back, lift them up, get as much of the soil off of the corm as you can, and then you have options. You can set them out to dry if they're very damp. It's usually good to let them dry for a day or so anyways. And then you just toss them in a paper bag with some vermiculite. If you live someplace that's very, very dry, maybe slightly, just very slightly moisten that vermiculite and put that someplace dark, cool, and dry during the wintertime in your basement, under a sink. Sometimes that works well for caladiums because they do tend to desiccate during the wintertime. The sink can be a somewhat more moist environment, not necessarily so moist though that they may end up rotting out. You can also pack them into perlite, which is what I usually do, because I usually have to worry about there being too much moisture during the wintertime. You can use sawdust, you can use peat moss, you can use nothing. What it goes back to, or down to, what it comes down to, I should say, is how long are they going to be dormant. So if your caladiums are like what I do, where I pack them up and they're going to be dormant from, say, I don't know, late October, November-ish until March, then you can get away with doing any one of those things I just described, probably. Heck, I could, and what I will probably do with this one is just cut it back and set this entire container someplace cool, dark, and dry. And when I'm ready to go ahead and put it underneath some grow lights and wake it up, just put it under there. I'll probably give it a day, resume watering, and within a couple weeks, it'll start to sprout up. Now, if you do live someplace where your dormancy is going to be a lot longer than that, then that does change things up some. You're going to want to be more conscious about checking on those corms to make sure that they're not desiccating too much. And really, you should be checking these things once a month anyways. I mean, nobody does, but we're supposed to. Making sure they aren't too shriveled, and at the same time, making sure they aren't covered in mold or something like that. If you have issues with mold, then putting some cinnamon or sulfur powder on them can help with that, but don't do the cinnamon thing. Some people suggest that. Do not do cinnamon with your bulbs during storage, your corms, whatever you're storing, unless you're already having some kind of an issue, because they will desiccate things and really dry them out, maybe more than you would want them to. So for me, these are going to be dormant from November through March, and then I wake them up, and I just use a tray with just a little bit of potting soil, and I just sprout all my corms out in there. I have them under a grow light. They wake up, and once they have, one or two small little leaflets, then I go ahead and I usually pot them up individually. And then come April to May, somewhere in there, then I could come out and put them in the landscape. Sometimes I wait until April to do this, and that's never been a problem. Sometimes I waited until May to do this, and that's never been a problem. I have really big palm trees in my yard. They're not here right now, but I do have some very large palm trees that go up to a greenhouse during the winter time. And some of those are underplanted with caladiums, and they go back to that greenhouse October. And the people at the greenhouse cut all the annuals and everything out from the bottoms of the containers or whatever you've planted in the pots, so that they just have focus on not planting, on watering the palm tree or bird of paradise, whatever you have in there. So those are cut down the entire winter. They don't bring those palm trees back here usually until mid-May. I resume watering, they're outside, and boom, those caladiums come back every single year. And the greenhouse that these plants are stored in stays about 50 to 65 degrees. It'll go warmer than that, but they don't make an effort to warm it much above 50. It's a very big building that would cost a fortune. So, saying that it's a waste of time and you won't be happy with your plants and those get smaller and smaller every year, that's pretty ridiculous. Just speaking from experience here, maybe there are some varieties where it's just not worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. But with a lot of caladiums, I say go ahead and give it a try, because it's so easy. And there are things you can do to help bulk up your caladiums also. So during the growing season, I like to make sure that I have mine planted with a good amount of compost and some bone meal. Bone meal really helps build up nice, strong corms in the plants. I mean, heck, I didn't even plant the caladiums over here, and they spread. They're so happy, they're so healthy, because I put all the organic stuff in here. Look how tall those summer pinks are. They're like 3 feet tall. I'm not letting those die down in the ground and just buying new ones next year. No way. I might with a few of them. I only have so much space in the house to store things, but for the most part, it's just so easy to just lift them up, get the soil off the roots, cut them back, put them in a box, paper bag, something like that. When I use a box, I do like to poke a couple holes in them, but it's just not complicated. In fact, I already have some sitting in a box back here that I pulled up. I haven't cut them back yet, but they're just sitting in a cardboard box, and they have been for 2 weeks. As soon as they start to slow down some more, I'm just going to cut them back and then move that inside, let them chill until things get more warm outside. Or if I feel like putting them under grow lights and starting them earlier, then I can do that in the grow space. However, I will just go with the caveat of them saying, or I should say the potential misinformation of them saying that there's no point in overwintering these things because they're just going to come back small and puny and pathetic. There can be truth to that. If you live someplace, maybe you're up in Minnesota, or maybe even further north, where their dormancy is going to be like September through June or July, yeah, maybe. That might be true. That might be pushing it, because you end up having such a short growing season with those plants that they're not building up a really big bulb, that corm. I'm using them interchangeably. They're not the same thing, but you know what I mean. They're storage. They're storage nut that they grow out of. Corm. It's a corm, right? Caladium corm. Well, it's sort of a bulb. It's not a rhizome. A rhizome is an underground stem. That doesn't matter. Point being, very, very, very long dormancies with really short growing seasons. Yeah, that potentially might be true. But there are ways to get around that. You have your caladiums potted, or maybe they're in the ground. Lift them, throw them in a pot, take them inside, grow them off as a houseplant until you start seeing signs, which is the slower growth, some yellowing. You'll see them start to shrivel, and the soil's not overly moist and not overly dry. They're just doing it on their own. That means they're ready for their dormancy. Then cut them back, do everything I talked about, or just keep them in their pot and put them someplace dark, cool, and dry, and then get them going earlier. They do not need much to get going. You put a caladium and just a little bit of soil underneath a grow light, and they will start to grow. So you could start them indoors a few months early, and that would be a good way to get around that. You're really extending the growing season, which is, that's something we could say for any plant, right? But that just might be the way around that. If you don't want to throw out your caladiums every year and buy new ones, then you can give that a try. Just start them off earlier. Get them going in the house for a couple months. They won't look all that great, probably. Caladiums just don't do wonderfully in the house, but they usually do okay. And like I said, there's always gonna be exceptions. There are very specialized varieties. Maybe you're growing something really exotic, but just as far as, the grand scheme of caladiums, typically, we're growing pretty common ones, a lot of us. So it should be worth trying, I think. All right, hey, that's all. Just had to go ahead and put that out there. I have other caladium videos where I do go in and show the process of cutting them back and what they'll look like. And I will link those down below, and I'll try and put them at the card here at the end of the video. They'll come up right now. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Comment down below, say hi, hope everybody's doing well, have a great day, great life, and everything's just going beautifully for you. Tips, tricks, suggestions, always appreciated. And of course, as always, and most importantly, everybody, keep on growing. Bye-bye.